Hi guys, compliments of the season and welcome to iFashi. Today I'll be showing you guys how to cut and sew this princess top with built-up collar. So here is the damask fabric I'll be using. For this top you'll need 2 yards for a size 10 to 12 or even 14. So before we start the drafting, here is the result of the one I made. I made a little alteration because I already have a top that has this wide hem. That's why I did not repeat it. I just made a slit in front of my own. And in the process of this video, I also explained if you do not want to make a slit, how to turn it to give you the exact result as it's showing on this picture. So now, see how mine came out? The zip, the neatness of the inside. I'll put you guys through how I achieved this as we start this video. Now let's begin. Here's the pattern paper that we'll be drafting on, and here's my pencil and my cleaner and my marker. It's advisable to use a pencil to draft so that you can clean when you make a mistake, but I'll be using a marker for the sake of this video so that it will be very visible for you guys to see. The first thing we'll do on this drafting is to take 3 inches on your paper downwards, because that will be needed when we are drafting the built-up collar. After taking that 3 inches, make a mark. Then go to the side of your paper and take 1 inch, because we are drafting the back first. So this depends on the inches you use for your zipper allowance. I will use 1.5, so I'll measure 1.5 all the way down and make a mark there. Now after marking out our zipper allowance, we'll now go ahead and start taking our body measurement. The first I will do is to take my chest measurement from the shoulder, and I'm using 8 inches. After marking out that chest measurement, you go downwards and take your waist measurement. And for waist measurement for the back waist measurement is different from front waist measurement. I've explained this before. My back nape to waist measurement is 15.5, and that's what I'm marking here. After doing this, from this 15.5, you go down by 9 inches to get your hip measurement, because this top is long. So after marking out your hip measurement, you mark another line there. And on these lines, remember to put the inscriptions like H, waist, like W, H, and C for chest, to know what these lines are for. Now after doing this, we'll go back to the shoulder measurement, that shoulder line, where we'll take our neck measurement. Then come in by 3.3 inches. How did I get 3.3? To get your accurate neck measurement, divide your bust measurement by 16 and add 1. So after taking that 3.3, go ahead and also mark your shoulder measurement divided by 2. So my shoulder divided by 2 is 8. And on that 8, you come down by 1 inch to get your shoulder slope. And then I also came to my chest line to get 8, and I'll take a straight line up to that my shoulder slope before I will now slant it to meet my 3.3, which is the neckline. That's what I just did here. So remember, this is the back, like I said before. Now focus on this part because we want to do the built-up collar. From this 3.3, I'm going up by 2 inches. Just watch closely. Going up by 2 inches, and then I'll make a mark there. After going up by that 2 inches, on that straight line, you go inwards by 0.5. And then on the same straight line, you come outwards on the shoulder line by 0.5. And then you use your curve rule to curve these two 0.5 that we just made. Now take note that this 2 inches we went up with is optional. If you don't want yours to be too high, you can use 1.5. But I decided to use 2 inches. Now after that, the next thing we'll do is to go downwards. Remember, we went 2 inches on both sides, so we will now go downwards on the zipper allowance part and go downwards by ½ an inch again, so that we can make a slant on the zipper part. And then after coming down by 0.5, you slant it from that 2 inches downwards. If you don't understand, watch it closely. You see how I went up by 2 inches on both sides, went in by 0.5, came out by 0.5 on the shoulder part, and then on the zipper part I came down by 0.5 before I made my curve. Now this part, you would take your tape and measure what you have here and write it down, because we'll be needing it when we are drafting the front for the built-up collar. So I measured what I have and I wrote it down. I wrote it under because when I'm cutting off, I'll cut off the upper part. So I want to keep that. Now for the armhole, we would divide what you have here by 2, make a mark there, come out by 1 inch, and then use our curve rule to curve from the 1 inch we came out with upwards to that half point we made our mark. Now after doing that, we will come down our chest line by 1 inch because we're about to start taking our back darts. Now divide your nipple to nipple measurement by 2 and mark it all the way down to your hip line, and then take a straight rule and rule it out. On this straight rule, we're stopping at that 1 inch we came down with under the chest line. On this straight rule, you're going to take your 0.75 inches dart on both sides on the waistline. After doing that, go to your hip line and come up by 2 inches because our dart is not going all the way down, to give that flare effect on the down of this top. Now after taking that 2 inches on the waistline, take out our dart. This part will be taken off. After doing this, we're going to the princess dart of the back of this top. Now get your curve rule on that 1 inch we came down with under the chest line, and then go to that half. Remember, we divided our armhole measurement there by 2, so we'll curve our princess dart out from there. Now I'm back to the waistline, taking our waist measurement. So I took my waist measurement divided by 4, added this dart allowance that we are removing, and then add your seam allowance. I'll just take your body measurement all the way down from your, on the chest line take your bust measurement, on the waistline take your waist measurement, and on the hip line we will take our hip measurement, then we will add 3 inches because this top has a flare effect under. So we'll add 3 inches to our hip measurement and curve it all the way to the waistline and down to the chest line. Then on this hip part, we're going to come up by another 3 inches because the side of this top is curved. So now you use your curve ruler to curve that side part down to our dart line. Now on this zipper part, I'm coming in by 0.5 on the waistline because we don't want any bulging at all. So we'll take a little dart there down to the hip line and upwards to the chest line. So I'll just remove that small part to avoid any bulging. Then this is me taking my bust measurement. I'm adding my seam allowance on the sides. As you can see, the seam allowance on the waistline is very small because we want it to be snatched. So add 1 inch seam allowance under that you use to fold your top. That's what I'm doing right here, and we are done with the back of this top. So the next thing we'll do now is to get another paper to draft out the front part. Thank you for watching to this point. I hope you've learned something. If you haven't subscribed, remember to do that. So now let's draft out the front piece. The same thing we did for the front by coming down by 3 inches on the neckline. That's what we're repeating here. So after doing that, I'll make a straight mark on that 3 inches and label it front, just as we labeled the back. Then on this front, on this shoulder line that we just drew, we're going to come down by 10.5, which is my bust point. You come down from the shoulder line, take your chest line, your chest point, mine is 8, and then your bust point 10.5, and then your under bust, mine is 13.5, and then your waist line, mine is 17. So that's what I just did. I'll mark out all the straight lines. All these 13.5, 10.5, I'm saying they are my measurements. Remember to use your own measurement and then label out all the lines. On my waistline, I'm going down by 9 inches for my hip line, and then I'll make that mark. Remember I said earlier that your front waist measurement and back waist measurement is not the same. My front waist measurement I'm using 17 and my back waist measurement is 15.5. So we will remove that dart by the side of the bust line later. Now let's go back to the shoulder line. On this shoulder line, take your neck measurement. After taking the neck measurement, you take our shoulder measurement. My shoulder measurement is 8, and I also took the same 8 on my chest line. I came down under my shoulder line by 1 inch for my shoulder slope, and then I'll slant it towards the neck measurement. Now remember, we're going up by 2 like we did for the back, 2 inches, and then I'll make a straight mark upwards. Then go in by 0.5 on that straight line, also come out by 0.5 on the shoulder point, and then use our curve rule to curve these to 0.5 to meet each other. Now on the same chest line on the other side, I'll come down by 1 inch because I want to slant this to meet these 2 inches I went up with. Watch it closely and see what I'm doing. Now from this slanting, we are going to come inwards by 1 inch. You can use 1/2 inch so that when you open it up, it will not be too wide. And then from that 1 inch or 1/2 inch, whichever you're using, make a slant down to meet your chest line. That will give us the opening in the front of this top. Make sure it reaches your chest line so that you can wear it freely. Now remember, we took measurements of our shoulder to neckline for the back. So now repeat the same thing for front and see if it is equal. If it is not equal, it means you're not doing it correctly. So make sure both of them are equal. Now let's go ahead and take our armhole curve. Now on our armhole line, you go in by 0.5, take your bust measurement on that chest line and connect these 3 with your curve rule from the shoulder point to the 0.5 and the bust measurement you just took. I'm using a pencil to mark this because I will not be using this one, so that's why I'm using the pencil. Remember I mentioned taking your under bust points earlier. I did not mark it out and I'm just doing that now. I label it UB under bust. Now I'll go ahead and start taking my nipple to nipple measurement on all of these lines, from the chest to the bust to the under bust to the waist and to the hip line, and then I'll make a straight rule there. From the bust to the hip line, you make a straight rule. Now on this under bust, you come out by 0.75 and on both sides. Then on the waistline, the same, come out by 0.75 on both sides, and then you make a straight rule as I'm doing. Now on the chest, on the bust line, come down by 1 inch so that you can curve your darts on that 1 inch. Now from this part that we made this curve, the 1 inch we came down with on our bust line, we are going to curve it to the midpoint of our armhole that we marked earlier with our curve rule to give us that princess dart effect. Now on this curved line, we will take our darts as well, our armhole darts, to avoid bulging on the armpits. So I'm taking 1/2 inch on both sides, which will serve as our darts. Now after marking that, you go upwards by 1 inch to avoid shortage when you cut it out. So now from that 1 inch I went up with, I'll make a new armhole curve. This 1 inch was taken both on the chest line and on the princess dart line. Then I'll now use my marker to highlight it. This is why I used the pencil earlier, because I knew I would not be needing that first one we did. Now on the hip line, like we did for the back, go up by 3 inches and then mark out the dart lines. Now come to the bust line and take your bust measurement, add your seam allowance. The under bust, take your under bust circumference and add your seam allowance, and also add these darts that we're taking out, add the allowance back. And then on the waistline, take your waist measurement divided by 4, add this seam, this dart allowance that we're taking off, and then add your seam allowance. Remember to reduce your waist seam allowance to give it that snatchy effect. Now like we did for the back on the hip line, we're going to take our hip measurement divided by 4 and add 3 inches to give us that flare effect on the hip. And then we'll curve it to meet the waistline. Now remember to add your 1 inch allowance on the hip line after adding 3 inches for the flare. So now go up by 3 inches as well on that side of the hip to give us that curve in the hip part of this top. And then we also add your 1 inch folding allowance for the top. And guys, it is very, very simple. Now remember when I mentioned earlier that the front waist measurement and back waist measurement is different, you measure what you have and you see the difference. Now what my difference is just 1.5 inch. That is because my back waist measurement is 15.5 and my front waist measurement is 17, which is what I'll be taking here. I came down from my bust line by 1.5 and then made this straight to meet the bust point. This shaded part will be cut off as the side bust dart. So now we'll just go ahead and cut out this front piece. Watch closely and see how I'm cutting it to know the parts I'm cutting out and the parts that I'm not cutting out. And after cutting them out, remember to label the back and the front. And that will be all for the drafting part of this beautiful top. Thank you so much for watching to this point. Now after cutting them out, this is what we have, the front and the back piece, and this is the damask fabric, the lining and the estée that I'll be using. Now I've gone ahead to iron my estée to both the fabric and the lining, and I added a little padding to the bust part of this front piece. So here is the side front piece. I added the small padding of the bust part, and here is the side back piece. Then here is the zipper part of the back piece. As you can see, I added seam allowance to the edges of this front part where we'll be joining the princess dart together. Now here is the sleeve. I've gone ahead to cut it out as well. It's a short sleeve. So this is the center front. As you can see, the built up high neck effect is already showing even before joining. So this is how we're going to go to our sewing machine and join. You join the side front to the center front on both sides like this. As you see me holding it, this is how you join it. You can decide to join from the down, you can decide to join from the upper part. And this is the lining. We'll repeat the same thing we did for the damask fabric and do the same thing on the lining. Join the two side front to the center front. We'll take that aside, and here is the center back with the zipper allowance. You take your side back and attach it to the center back. As you see me arranging on the table, this is how we're going to take it to the sewing machine to join. We'll do the same thing on the lining as well. Now after joining, this is what we have. We have joined the side back to the center back, and we have also gone ahead to join the side front to the center front. Endeavor to iron your job as you are sewing. See this seam part that we joined? Open it up and give it a very good press. It gives your job a very nice and neat finishing. So the next thing we're going to do now is to place the good sides of the front facing each other and join this neck line. After joining that, we'll also take this back to the sewing machine, and I'll show you how you'll be joining your zipper allowance together to give it that neat finish on the inside. So you take the two good sides of this back facing each other, and then you take your tape, come down with 3 inches from the neckline, because our zip will not get to our neck. So you come down with 3 inches and make a stitch there. Take the lining as well, facing each other, 2 good sides. Then take your tape, measure 3 inches, come down and join as well. Now this is the front that we've gone ahead to join the neckline. This is what we have. Before we turn it over, give it a notch. Notch this neckline so that when you flip it over, it will be very neat. Now after notching this neckline, we are going to flip it over to the right side of the fabric so that you see what we did. Now after flipping it over, this is what we have. We are going to give it a good press. We're also going to top stitch it as well. So now after finishing with the neck part, the next part is the down part of the top. Now remember, in the beginning of this video, I told you I did not leave my down like this. I gave mine a slit because I have something like this before, right? But if you want to leave yours like this to appear exactly as it is on the picture that we're using, just go ahead and make a stitch around, turning the right side facing each other and make a stitch. Then after that, you top stitch and turn it over. But since I'm not making a stitch all round, I'm giving mine a little slit, I'll just take my tape, come up to the waist line of this top, and then I'll use my chalk to give it a freehand curve. I just use my tape to measure upwards to my waistline because that's where I want the slit to start from. This is completely optional for you. If you're following what you have on the picture exactly, just go ahead and turn the down of your top. As it is placed on the table like this, turn it. You don't need to do all of these slits I'm doing. So after doing this mark that I'm making here, I'll cut it off and then I will now give it a stitch all around. Now after cutting out the slits, I'll go ahead and make a stitch around the down part. Here is the stitch I just made. I'll just go ahead and give it a notch on that edge and then flip it over to the right side. After flipping it over, the next thing I'll do is to give it a good press. Always iron your work as you are doing to make it very, very neat. And after ironing, we'll go ahead and focus on the back part. Remember, we have not fixed our zip. We just made a stitch on that 3 inches from the neckline downwards. So after ironing this front part, we'll keep it aside and then work on the back piece. Now here is our back piece that we stitched earlier. So we'll now open it out and I'll show you guys how to fix the zip. But on this, remember, on these 3 inches that we stitched down, remember to make a notch at the end of that stitch you just made so that it will be easy to open up on the outside, as you see me doing like this. Repeat the same thing on the lining. And now after opening it up, you get your zip. The zip we're using in this top is the open up zip, the zip that you can open up and open the cloth. That's what they call open up zip. This zip will be fixed only on the fabric alone. Then after fixing the zip on the fabric, you now get your lining and face it on top of the fabric to turn it, the zip. Then remember to notch your lining as well. The notching we did for the main fabric at the end of that 3 inches, remember to notch your lining. So this is what you are going to have after fixing the zip to the main fabric. Well, we have done that. Remember to leave 1 inch while fixing your zip. Please remember to leave 1 inch under your fabric so that you use it to turn. That's where you would turn with the lining. I finished fixing the zip to the main fabric itself and I left 1 inch allowance under the zipper. So what you do now is to introduce your lining, place it on top of the fabric like this and make a stitch with your zipper foot. Make a stitch and end that stitching on that 3 inches. That's why we made that notch, so that it will be easy to stitch. After stitching, if you've opened it out, this is what you have. The zip will be hidden in between the lining and the fabric, and it will give your job a very neat job. Then the 1 inch we left under, you use it to turn the under. And this is what we have after fixing this, after turning the zip with the lining. See how beautiful it is inside and out. We use the 1 inch under to turn the down part and the neck part as well. So this is why you use an open up zip, so that you can open it out like this. So the next thing we need to do now is to iron. But before that, let me give a little recap on how I did this. We fixed the zipper on the fabric and then we used the lining to turn the zipper, and that's why you have it like this. Remember to notch any part that is swollen or any edge and cut out your excesses to avoid swelling or bulging, and then give it a very good press and you'll be very proud of your job. See how neat it is. After ironing now, I'll now go ahead and attach it, the back to the front piece, before we attach our sleeves. After giving it that good press, you see how flat and neat it looks on the edges, on the inside and out. Even the front, we've also gone ahead to give it a nice press. It's looking very neat, flat and fine. So the next thing we're going to do now is to attach this front piece to the back piece on the shoulder. So if you don't know how to turn a shoulder already, you should watch this video and learn. You can also turn these sides as well. Go ahead and turn the good sides facing each other. As you see me folding on the table, hold it like this, good side facing each other, and stitch. By the time you open it out, the edges will be very, very neat. I will do the same thing for the back and the front. Turn it good sides facing each other and stitch up to the armhole point. But before we go ahead and turn these sides, I'm going to go ahead to the sewing machine and turn the shoulder first. This is how you turn your shoulder. Make the good sides face each other. Open up the back. Most times I use the back to turn the front. So open up the back, the lining and the main fabric. Your front piece will be in between the lining and the main fabric. As you see me turning, see the way I turned it. I turned out the lining and I used the back to turn the front. The same thing on the other side. Open up the back, place it like this and sew down. That's what I will go and do in the machine. And then guys, this is what I have after turning the shoulder. You see how neat the inside is, and then our neck collar is showing already. So if it's having bulge or too many excess, remember to cut it off to make your work very neat. So this side folding this side turning that I explained earlier, I'll go ahead and flip it out to the wrong side, take my body measurements before I turn my side. So when you open it out, take your waist measurements, your bust measurements, and then your hip measurements before you turn. This is what we call fitting that we do most of the times when we sew. So I'll measure my waist, and this is the back piece, so I use 15.5, and then I took my waist measurements from that 15.5, and then come up to my armhole where I'm taking my bust measurement on both sides, and then I'll now use my chalk to connect it down to the hip line. So this chalk is where I'll follow when I'm turning the both sides out. I explained how you will turn it earlier. You open it up, the good sides facing each other, and turn. Some persons sew like this straight down and will use weaving machine to weave it, but I prefer to turn to make my job very neat. Now this is the sleeve, the short sleeve. I cut short sleeve and I gave it a little excess on the shoulder to give me that pleat on this top. If you notice, this style has a little pleat on the shoulder. So I've gone ahead to join my sleeve to my top, and see the little pleat here. Here is the sleeve, here is my slit I did in front, which I told you earlier that it's optional, and then here is the finished job. This is the neckline. See how beautiful it is. This top is very beautiful, guys. I can't wait to see you do your own. Let us know in the comment section how helpful this video is to you, and if you have any questions, go ahead and ask in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching to this point. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.